Sean Michael Cox is a political scientist and the Director of International Academic Affairs at Bahcesehir University here in Istanbul, and he joins us now. Thanks so much for joining us, Doctor. Now, what has just happened? Why has the US government shut down? Why was there no deal?
The government has shut down because they failed to reach agreement on a spending resolution that would extend the budget. This is actually a shutdown of a one-month extension because the government was originally supposed to have shut down in December, and Democrats and Republicans came together and made a compromise. The compromise now, given the current political environment, is very hard to achieve, and there are two positions, and both sides are intractable about their positions. For the Democrats, it's a resolution of the Dreamer issue, and for the Republicans, it has to deal with an increase in military spending. Okay. Now, just give us a bit of a background. What happens in a shutdown exactly, and what is it? Basically, what happens is non-essential government services are terminated. So, for example, national museums and national parks are closed down. Employees that are considered non-essential are told to stay home. They're technically furloughed. But essential employees, military personnel, federal security services, Customs and Border Protection will still continue working, although technically they will be working without pay. And I just read that the last one in 2013 cost the economy $24 billion in economic output. Now, just very quickly on the blame that we've just been hearing, Senator Chuck Schumer, Democratic minority leader, saying, Mr. President, if you're listening, he's called it President Trump's shutdown. Where does the blame really lie? And also, how do you think President Trump will react? Will it be with a tweet or an official press conference, maybe? Well, this is very interesting because this is the first ever government shutdown where both the Congress and the executive branch were under control of one party. The blame itself can be divided up depending on what position you do take. There were several bipartisan efforts that went to the president's desk and that were shut down on Thursday and as Friday as well. The president, of course, will obviously tweet. I can't imagine him not tweeting about this, but there will be some sort of follow-up press conference. Whether he will do it or someone else, we don't know. Okay, do stay with us, Dr. Sean, because we have to look at a year of Trump in office. Now, the shutdown has brought a chaotic close to Donald Trump's first year, and let's look more closely at what that has meant.
The West will never, ever be broken. Our values will prevail.
This is the White House's official version of Donald Trump's first year in office. But the slick Hollywood-style video isn't necessarily the way everyone would interpret the past 12 months.
Help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
Even at Trump's inauguration, a ceremony supposed to unite the country, there was controversy. Trump and his team claiming a bigger crowd for his swearing-in than for his predecessor, Barack Obama.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
It set the tone for an extraordinary 12 months. A president who defied political convention and who dismissed his critics as peddlers of fake news.
Go ahead. No, not you. Not you. Your organization is terrible.
The nation and the world watched open-mouthed.
I think it's very difficult to ever imagine that a president would behave the way that Donald Trump has behaved. But at the same time, I think that it is somewhat easy to predict that a essentially reality TV star personality would treat the White House like it was a set for a Hollywood show.
But there have been some serious decisions.
Protection of the nation from foreign terrorists.
He's tried to ban people from several predominantly Muslim nations from entering America.
It's big stuff.
He's pulled the US out of the international deal to tackle global climate change.
I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
He's recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He's stoked a row with North Korea over Pyongyang's repeated missile tests.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
And he's presided over the biggest tax overhaul in a generation. His supporters have loved him for it.
President Trump this last year has accomplished astounding things, including a record stock market, which broke 25,000 last week. He has done more in 1 year than Obama accomplished in 2. It's absolutely been underplayed by the media, and they get sort of lost in this white noise.
But his presidency so far has been defined less by what he's done than what he's said. He's used the social media platform of Twitter to rail against enemies, both real and perceived. He described Barack Obama as a bad or sick guy. The North Korean leader was derided as Little Rocket Man, and he referred to himself as a very stable genius. But persuading the American people of his genius may be less important than convincing investigators there was no collusion between his election team and the Kremlin. If he fails to do that, there may not be many more anniversaries for him at the White House. John Brain, TRT World, Washington.
And we can bring back Dr. Sean Michael Cox here. He's a political scientist and the Director of International Academic Affairs at Bahcesehir University in Istanbul. Thanks so much for being here with us. Now, let's look at Trump's first year. The anniversary will be marking that tomorrow, and that has just been ushered in with a US government shutdown. Tell me, what has stood out for you in the successes and failures?
It's been a very interesting year for Trump, needless to say. It's been bookmarked by a failure to pass health care reform and repeal of Obamacare at the beginning of his term, and now, as you've mentioned, it's ended with a government shutdown. His year has been characterized by a lot of bluster, where he speaks with a megaphone or he tweets everything. But what's actually very interesting is that he's had quite a few successes that have gone under the radar, that have been very subtle. For example, he's had over 50 new appointees to the federal bench, which will essentially change how the federal court system operates, making it more conservative over the next 20 to 30 years. He's managed to put in place one of the most conservative Supreme Court justices in decades, and having the tax overhaul go through, it was a significant success.
That's so interesting, because we rarely talk about successes, apart from the stock exchange, which I talk about a lot. And what worries you going forward with President Trump? Maybe North Korean nuclear action, or even his sanity, as we saw last week? What worries you?
Oh, what's very interesting for me is to see how Trump has a public persona that speaks very directly to the base, where he has a team behind him that's working to reach out to the opposition, out to build coalitions, to move the government forward, to make progress on deals. But it's the contradiction from what's happening behind the scenes to what's happening in public that's very worrisome, because at some point the disconnect will become so large that no progress will be made and no agreement will be reached between opposing parties.